Now here's a truck to be reckoned with. £92,000 gross vehicle weight, 8-wheel drive, 600 horsepower, 2,050 pound-feet of torque, and a 306-inch wheelbase. This truck lives for roads that would break your average highway hauler in half. It's Freightliner's Extreme Heavy Haul 122 SD. Hi, I'm Jim Park with today's Trucking's Ultimate Test Drive Series. We're here at the Stony Point Rock Quarry in Cotati, California with this great-looking Freightliner 122 SD 8x8 Ultra Heavy Haul oil tanker. We're going to get up close and personal with it here in just a minute, find out some of the features of that truck, so why don't you follow me over, we'll have a closer look at it. Vocational trucks are distinctly different from on-highway freight haulers. More often than not, the truck is not much more than a platform that delivers some other piece of equipment to a job site, like a crane or a vacuum truck. In this case, a tank, designed for hauling crude over mostly off-road terrain. It's not a workplace for the faint of heart, or I should say the faint of chassis. Up to this point, we've only taken on-highway trucks out for the ultimate test drive, so I'm pretty stoked about making this Freightliner 122 SD our very first vocational test drive. So what makes a vocational truck different from an on-highway truck? Here to explain the difference is Freightliner's General Manager of Vocational Sales, Richard Sayward.
Vocational trucks are primarily tools. So vocational trucks are used by people to affect things in their environment. Construction, they're used to bring material in and out of a job site. They're used to excavate. Some of the criteria that you have to meet for your customers is you've got to provide a platform that they're going to mount their equipment on that can be stable and durable. So I think a customer is always looking for durability.
And durable it'll have to be to survive 10 years of running around on Alberta's oil fields, and that's where this truck is going to see the bulk of its service. Let's take a walk around and see what she's made of. So let's start with the front end of this thing. 23,000-pound drivable steer axle. It's got a driver-controlled diff in it, 23,000-pound flat leaf springs, and a 2-speed transfer case. What more could you want? If you get into some tough stuff, you got 3 axles driving at the back, and if you need one more, reach down, flick the diff lock, and up you go. No stopping this puppy. Right behind that, we've got the battery box, and an extra step on here you'll notice because this thing is so darn tall. Here we've got a 23-gallon DEF tank. That's the maximum capacity, so if these guys are working out in the field for a day or two, they're not going to be running short of diesel exhaust fluid. Got a 70-gallon fuel tank here, 120 gallons on the other side, but Freightliner recently went to a 25-inch tank so they could make some room at the back of the cab. We'll show you up here later, but right behind the back of this cab, it's completely flat, and that's to help the bodybuilders get all their equipment on the back there. What we couldn't see in that clip was the 1,700 square inch radiator, the Fabco 2-speed transfer case, the 7/16 by 13 1/8 inch steel frame rail with 1/4 inch inserts, a rock guard, and a skid plate. Now let's check under the hood. The driver's daily checkpoints are easy enough to get to, and Daimler's virtual technician is going to keep its eye on anything that the driver can't see. Up here we've got the DD16 600 horsepower, 2050 pound-feet of torque. From a driver's point of view, doing the daily checks, pretty simple here, except we have to look up, not down. It's the first time I ever looked up at a dipstick before. Got your oil levels here, power steering reservoirs here, oil water separator, coolant level, everything's pretty easy to see. Getting up to fill stuff like the windshield washer, of course. Just a small climb up here. You're in there, no big deal. And if you're having to look back at your brakes and under the steering mechanism here, lots of room to crawl under the hood and have a look. So really well laid out. Everything the driver needs here is right close at hand, but there's a lot of stuff in this engine that the driver can't see, so we've got virtual technician. This engine's got that self-diagnostic system all run through telematics, so that if there's a problem on board, practically anywhere in the truck, as a matter of fact, not just on the engine, chances are the computer will know about it before the driver. It's watching for serious faults and it's watching for minor faults. If you've got a minor fault that's not mission critical, we can live with it, we'll keep on trucking. If there's a serious problem that's going to cause some long-term damage, get the message to shut everything down, get a repair ticket started, and get the thing fixed. And there are a few other things that will make the driver's life a little easier and a little safer too. Up here in the front still, we've got a fiberglass hood, all fiberglass one-piece hood. We've got the corrosion-resistant aluminum Freightliner cab that's been proven through the years. We've also got a great looking stainless steel sun visor that gives that truck that sort of classic look. And a really thoughtful piece here is the two-piece windshield. A lot of the on-highway trucks now are going to the wraparound windshields for fuel economy. That's not a really big deal out in the oil patch, but every time you throw a rock through that windshield, it's going to cost a ton of money. So we've got a two-piece windshield, a lot easier to repair and maintain. The doors on this one are actually really cool. We've got a two-piece insulation strip in here. One's for the wind, one in the cold weather, the other's for sound. And it's a steel reinforced door, so it's really solid, and you can tell that when you close it. Up front here, we've got these sexy new LED headlights. If you've ever seen these work in the dark, you'd be amazed at the difference between the LED and the halogen. So what a great place for bright headlights when you're working out in the oil patch. No street lights out there. Up here on the front, we've got these Michelin XZL 445 65R 22.5 on-road, off-road tires. Pretty standard in the oil field and places where you get some pretty rugged terrain. You'll notice here as well, we've got the tire pressure management system on this truck. A little sensor right here in the valve cap. And around back, we've got the airway strain gauge to sense the amount of weight that's on the steer axle. Another feature to help the driver know how much he's loading onto the truck. Well, that about covers a lot of the cool stuff up front. Now let's take a walk around back and check out the tri-drive rear axles and the tank body. Right back here on the back, we've got this 69,000 pound tri-drive axle assembly. Each axle is good for 23,000 pounds. We've got the Freightliner airliner suspension on each one. We've got locking diffs, and we've got the interaxle differential lockout as well, all controlled from the cab. So the driver's in complete charge of this thing at all times. And down here on two of the drive axles, you notice we've got the on-spot chaining device. That's a driver controlled option as well. Flick of the switch, it deploys a chaining mechanism so the driver's got virtually instant traction without having to get out and sling all the jewelry every time he gets into a tough spot. And up here on top, we've got the Truck Evolution 6,000 gallon 22.8 cubic meter oil tank. It's good for sour crude or crude oil. They can pressure or vacuum load or unload this thing, all right here in the control cabinet for the driver to use. If you weren't already aware, the SD in 122 SD stands for severe duty. As we've seen, this truck is built to take on some pretty big, pretty tough jobs. As Richard Sayward mentioned earlier, these trucks have to be durable. The customers have a lot riding on their choice of chassis, putting a lot of pressure on Freightliner to make sure they've tested and retested these things to within an inch of their lives, and even beyond sometimes, to make sure they're up to the challenge.
Vocational trucks, you just have to design it tough, and that's where we run a tough test engineering department at Freightliner in Portland. We've got an individual up there, Al Pearson, who runs our truck testing department, who's a truck guy. It's in his blood. And he tests things, he cycles doors and see what it would take to have the durability for the 10-year life cycle. So we test the heck out of our trucks before we put them in the customer's hands.
So what's left but to take the thing out for an ultimate test drive? While we couldn't find anything here in Napa, California that replicated the oil fields of northern Alberta, we did manage to find a tricky little two-lane road just a few miles from our base here. Let's go check it out. I'm Jim Park for today's Trucking's Ultimate Test Drive. Drive it like you own it and keep your revs down.